Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with the next video in the countdown towards the resumption of the 2020 Candidates Tournament to decide who will be challenging Magnus Carlsen next for the world title. The Candidates Tournament started in March 2020 but was cut short because of the coronavirus pandemic threat. But it's all going to kick off again on Sunday, November 1st, and on Chess to Impress we're counting down by looking at all 29 earlier candidates tournaments or candidates matches which decided on the challenger for the world title. It all started in the tournament in London 1883 when Johannes Zukertort won the event with William Steinitz coming in second place, and that led to the first official World Championship match 3 years later which Steinitz won. We had a St. Petersburg 1895-1896 tournament, which was won by world champion Emanuel Lasker. Wilhelm Steinitz finished in second place, and that gave him the right to challenge the world champion for a rematch. It is in red there because this is the tournament we're going to look at in this video. In the next video we'll look at Paul Keres winning the event in the Netherlands in 1938. He did not get a world championship match because of World War II. Then we go to Budapest and Moscow 1950, where Bronstein won and challenged world champion Botvinnik. Vasily Smyslov won 2 candidate cycles, Zurich 1953, probably the most famous tournament in chess, and Amsterdam 1956. Misha Tal won Yugoslavia 1959 and became world champion the next year by beating world champion Botvinnik. Tigran Petrosyan won the tournament in Curaçao 1962, and it was his turn to challenge Botvinnik. Boris Spassky also won 2 candidates tournaments in Tbilisi 1965 and Kiev 1968. Bobby Fischer won the last candidate match against Tigran Petrosyan in Buenos Aires 1971, and the year after he played the famous match of the century against Spassky in Reykjavik. Then the Karpov era started. He beat Viktor Korchnoi in the last match in Moscow 1974. Fischer did not defend his title and Karpov became world champion. Viktor Korchnoi qualified twice more to play Karpov by winning the next 2 candidate cycles. And then Garry Kasparov came on the scene. He won the next candidate cycle to challenge Karpov. Karpov came back, beat Andrei Sokolov in Linares 1987. To qualify to play Kasparov again, and he did so as well in Kuala Lumpur 1990 by beating Jan Timman and getting into a 5th match against Garry Kasparov. That was the end of the Karpov era. In 1993, Nigel Short beat Karpov in the semi-finals and Timman in the final to qualify to play Kasparov. And in 1995, it was Vishwanathan Anand's turn to challenge world champion Kasparov. Cazorla 1998 was a strange one. Alexei Shirov beat Vladimir Kramnik, but he never got a world championship match. Kramnik did, and he defended his title in 2004 against Peter Leko, who had won the candidates cycle in Dortmund 2002. 4 winners of the candidate cycle in 2007 because we had a world championship tournament, and Aronyan, Gelfand, Grishuk and Leko qualified. Sofia 2009 was won by Veselin Topalov, and he qualified to play Anand for the world title. And in 2011 it was Gelfand's turn. London 2013 was won by Carlsen, and he played and defeated Anand. But Anand wasn't finished. He won Khanty-Mansiysk 2014 to qualify for a rematch against Carlsen. Moscow 2016 was won by Karyakin. Berlin 2018 by Caruana, and they both played and almost beat Carlsen. So who will it be? Yekaterinburg 2020. The tournament is halfway and we're going to start again on Sunday, November 1st. So in this video we're looking at the second official candidates event. St. Petersburg 1895-1896. It was one of the strongest tournaments of the 19th century. And the top 5 finishers from the Hastings 1895 tournament were invited. Harry Nelson Pillsbury, Mikhail Chigorin, Emanuel Lasker, the world champion, Siegbert Tarrasch and Wilhelm Steinitz. Lasker was world champion and Steinitz had been world champion before losing the championship to Lasker in 1894. Towers declined the invitation due to work commitments. He was a doctor, so the other 4 players played a 6-round match tournament. They played each other 6 times. Pillsbury took an early lead. He had been the winner of Hastings 1895 and took an early lead in this event. At the halfway point, the scores were Pillsbury 6.5, Lasker 5.5, Steinitz 4.5 and Chigorin 1.5. The tournament was played in his town and in his chess club, so Chigorin had other jobs to do apart from concentrating on the games. Pillsbury fell ill halfway through the tournament and collapsed, and in the end the world champion won. Steinitz came in second, and this allowed Steinitz to raise support for a world championship rematch between Lasker and Steinitz in 1897, which Lasker then won. These were the final results of the St. Petersburg tournament. Lasker with 11.5 points, 2 points ahead of Steinitz. Pillsbury, who had been the star of the first half, collapsed in the second half, only made 3 more draws and finished in 3rd place, while Chigorin somewhat improved his score in the second half of the tournament, finishing on 7 points from 18 games. In this video we're going to look at a game from round 10 with Harry Nelson Pillsbury behind the white pieces against world champion Emanuel Lasker. Pillsbury was leading the event, and this proved to be a turning point. I'm taking the notes that Garry Kasparov gives in his great book My Great Predecessors, and it is the 4th of January 1896. The new year has just started, and we'll look at this game. d4 from Pillsbury, d5 from Lasker, c4, e6, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, we have a queen's gambit declined, and c5. Kasparov says that c takes d5 or e3 is nowadays more common in this position, but in 1896 Pillsbury played the bishop to g5. Lasker took on d4, and knight takes d4 is possible, but then e6, e5 equalizes for black, explains Kasparov. In the game, Pillsbury took with the queen on d4. Bishop e7 is a quiet continuation, as Lasker himself wrote in his notes to this game, but knight c6 was played by him in the game. The bishop takes f6 is the correct move, according to Kasparov. He doesn't give any variations, but after g takes f6, the best move is queen h4. After knight c6, Pillsbury played queen h4 straight away, not taking on f6 first. Bishop e7, and here castling queenside, a risky idea, but after the move e3, then queen b6 is unpleasant, writes Kasparov, with annoying pressure against the b2 pawn. As said, Pillsbury castled queenside. Queen a5, e3, bishop d7 developing, king stepped away from the c-file, and h6, and this move gets an exclamation mark from Kasparov. As Lasker himself writes, either the bishop must be exchanged by taking on f6, or the queen must stay where she is. And the queen stayed where she was. Pillsbury took on d5. Of course, you cannot take on g5 now, because then the rook in the corner is hanging with check. So after c takes d5, Lasker recaptured. Knight d4, castling, and now the bishop on g5 is hanging. So Pillsbury decided to take on f6. Bishop takes h6 is not good, because then there is g takes, queen takes, and knight e4, and black has enough defenders around his exposed king. White doesn't have enough attack for the piece. In the game, Pillsbury did not take on h6, he took on f6. Bishop takes, attacking the queen, queen h5, knight takes d4, e takes d4, and bishop e6. And as Kasparov writes, Lasker had already seen what he would do against white, advancing his f-pawn to f5, kicking that bishop. He had seen the continuation already. Indeed, Pillsbury plays f4, and we have a position with opposite castling that always promises exciting fights with both players advancing on opposite wings. Rook ac8 and f5 as planned, but now look at this move. Not retreating the bishop, it could have been done, bishop d7, and then queen f3, as Kasparov writes, with a double-edged position. But after f5, Lasker did not retreat the bishop. He took on c3, the classical rook sacrifice on c3. What a move. Double exclamation mark in Kasparov's book. If you take the rook, then there is queen takes c3, and white has to quickly try and get the queens off the board, otherwise black has a mating attack with queen b4 check and rook c8. So Kasparov gives queen f3, trying to get the queens off the board, and then gives this variation: queen takes, g takes, bishop takes f5 check, bishop d3 interposing, and bishop h3. And Kasparov calls this a depressing endgame for white with problematic drawing chances. Black has 2 pawns for the exchange and has a better position. Pillsbury did not want to go for this. So let's go back to the game. That rook takes c3 shot just happened, and we just looked at what happens after white takes the rook, followed by queen takes c3. It's interesting that Kasparov does not discuss rook c8 instead of queen takes c3, which my engine is screaming is the best move here, after which black is winning. But in the game, after rook takes c3, Pillsbury did not take on c3, he took the bishop, f takes e6. And now rook a3, and that is the point of the combination, explains Kasparov. He says this paradoxical rook sacrifice forces the white king to begin a fight for its own existence. The white king is now coming under heavy fire. So what to do for white? You can play e7 here, or you can take the rook. And these are moves that Pillsbury must have looked at. Kasparov gives some variations which show that these moves don't work for white. In the end, Pillsbury chose to take on f7 with the tempo e takes f7 check. Rook takes, and now he took on a3. Queen b6 check, and let's look at a few variations. What happens if you play king a1 here? Well, then you get mated. Bishop takes d4 check. You have to give the rook. Queen takes d4 check. King b1. Queen e4 check, important move. King back. Queen e1 check. King b2. There comes the rook. King b3. Queen b1 check. King a4. Rook f4 check, and checkmate on the next move. Nice variation. So that after queen b6 check and king a1. What happens after king c2? Well, then also black wins. Rook c7 check, king d2, queen takes d4 check, king e1, queen c3 check, rook interposes, rook e7 check, bishop interposes, and bishop g5 with a winning position for black. So again, queen b6 check was played. We looked at king a1, we looked at king c2. Pillsbury found the best move, bishop b5. Kasparov says this is the best chance, forcing the black queen on a different diagonal. White is a rook up, so he can afford giving back some material. Lasker took the bishop, king a1, and rook c7. The point of the bishop sacrifice is that there's now no bishop takes d4 check. And also white's back rank is now stronger with the rook on h1 not being blocked by that bishop that was on f1. You cannot take on d4 instead, because then there is rook takes d4. The queen is no longer on b6, which was guarding that d4 square. That was the point of that bishop b5 move. So after king a1, rook c7 was played. Rook d2, rook c4, and rook h2 d1, question mark, in Kasparov's book. He says rook e1 results in a pretty draw, and he gave some nice variations. You cannot take on d4. That is a double question mark move, because then actually white wins with rook e8 check, king h7, queen f5 check, g6, queen takes f6, and if you take the rook, white will take the black rook, and white has a winning position with an extra rook. So let's go back. We said rook a1 makes a pretty draw. We just took on d4, that is not good. Queen a5 is the best move here, exclamation mark from Kasparov. Let's look at a variation. Then we also have rook e8 check, king h7, queen f5 check, g6 and do not take on f6, because then there is a mate in 2. If you want to put the video on pause and look for that checkmate in 2 moves. With rook c1 check, king b2 and checkmate with queen c3. Did you find that? So after g6 we should not take the bishop, but we have rook e7 check, very nice move. Because if that rook is taken, then there is a perpetual queen f7 check, king in the corner, queen e8 check, king h7 and queen f7 check. And there's no way that black can prevent the perpetual check on the bottom 2 ranks by the queen. So all this after rook c4 played in the game and then rook e1, leading to a draw. But Pillsbury played the rook to d1 instead, and that is a mistake. Because now queen c6 is the best move, according to Kasparov. Lasker didn't find it and played rook c3 instead, and that move also gets a question mark from the 13th world champion. Because now white is alive again. Queen f5, queen c4, and now king b1 needs to be played instead of king b2, which was played in the game. What a difference a square makes. Kasparov shows that after this move, white may actually have the better position and will be able to set up an attack of his own. Chess history could have taken a different course, says Kasparov. But king b2 was played, and then rook takes a3 came, another beautiful move from Lasker. And Kasparov writes, this is some kind of mysticism. The second rook is sacrificed on the exact same square as the first rook. Pillsbury must not have believed his eyes. And actually we now see one of the points why king b1 would have been better on the previous move, because now queen takes a2 is a threat. With the king on b1, that a2 pawn is defended by the rook on d2, and that's one reason why king b1 was better than king b2. But king b2 was played and rook takes a3. If you take the rook, you get checkmated again. If you want to look for yourself and find this checkmating pattern, it's always good to practice checkmating patterns. It goes as follows: queen c3 check, king a4, it's all forced, b5 check, the king has only one move, king takes b5, queen c4 check, king a5, and then the bishop delivers a checkmate blow. Nice checkmating sequence. So the rook cannot be taken, and Pillsbury saw that and played queen e6 check. King h8 wins cleanly according to Kasparov, but Lasker played king h7 instead. And now queen f5 check, king h8 and king b1 would lead to a draw, explains Kasparov. A very complex position, no surprise that the players in 1896 did not see everything. But after king h7, Pillsbury did not play queen f5 check, he took the rook now, and that walks into a checkmate, and we actually see a checkmate on the board. Queen c3 check, king a4, b5 check, king takes, queen c4 check, king a5, and bishop d8 check, very similar to the variation we just saw. Here Kasparov writes that Pillsbury resigned. My database gives also the last move. After queen b6, there is bishop takes b6 checkmate. It's unlikely that these moves came on the board. Probably Pillsbury resigned after bishop d8 check. After this loss, Pillsbury collapsed in the second half of the tournament. His opponent in his game, Emanuel Lasker, won the event, followed by the old warrior Willem Steinitz, who thus earned the right to challenge Lasker for a rematch for the world title. I hope you liked this video and that you'll keep counting down towards the Candidates Tournament Resumption with me. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like the video and this series, then please share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.